I eased into the car's seat, my limbs still aching from the long days spent recovering at the hospital. The breeze outside was crisp, and the late afternoon light poured golden shadows across the dash. That's when I saw him, my nephew, Carter, stepping out of his vehicle, the angle of the sun tracing the strong line of his jaw. He wasn't the same child I once took to the zoo or the local arcade. He was all grown up now. "Aunt Melissa," he greeted, holding the door open for me with a warm smile. His voice was calm but strong, the kind that carried a quiet reassurance. As he leaned in to help me, his arm wrapped gently around my back, guiding me into place. "You doing okay?" I gave a soft nod, unsure if the flutter in my chest came from fatigue or something deeper. "Thank you, Carter. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you." His cologne hung softly in the air as he shut my door and circled around to the driver's side. My gaze followed him for a beat longer than it should have, watching the way his shirt hugged his frame, the steady, purposeful way he moved. There was something about him now, wiser, more grounded, as if the weight of the world had made him stronger. Once he was in, and the car purred to life, I turned to the window, hoping the view would center me. The silence between us hummed with familiarity, edged with something unspoken. I thought of the little boy who used to chase squirrels in the yard, who once begged me for cotton candy and clung to my hand on roller coasters. Now, at 21, he was composed, almost solemn, a boy shaped into a man after losing his mother far too young. "Was the hospital all right?" he asked quietly, eyes fixed on the road. "Slow," I admitted with a small smile. "But it's good to be home." "You're not on your own now," he said, glancing over before returning his focus. "I'll take care of everything." The weight of his promise settled in my chest like warmth. I remembered the after-school visits, the glee in his eyes when I brought him a toy or a chocolate bar. I remembered the park bench where we shared stories, where his fingers curled around mine tightly when he was scared. That felt like a different lifetime. "You've really grown," I murmured, more to myself than him. He chuckled. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true," I replied, folding my hands neatly. "You've gone through so much." She would have been so proud. His grip on the steering wheel shifted slightly. "I hope so," he said after a pause. I didn't really have time to figure things out. I just had to keep going. My heart ached. "But you didn't just get through it. You found your strength." He let out a dry laugh. "Some days it doesn't feel like that. Some days, I'm just getting by." Without thinking, I placed a hand gently on his forearm. "You're not doing it alone, Carter. I'm here." He glanced at where my hand rested, and for a moment, time slowed. The quiet between us deepened, the soft warmth of his skin beneath my palm, making something inside me stir. His gaze flicked up to mine for a heartbeat longer than usual, and something passed between us, silent, but impossible to ignore. When we reached my townhouse, he parked carefully and came to help me out. His hand at my back was steady, familiar. As we walked to the door, his arm stayed around me, and for a second, I remembered the little boy who once needed help tying his shoes. Now it was me leaning on him. Inside, Carter settled me onto the sofa, tucked a blanket around my legs, and asked, "Want me to make some tea?" I nodded, watching as he moved to the kitchen. The home that once felt far too quiet suddenly felt warmer, like his presence filled a space I didn't realize was empty. As I leaned back into the cushions, I wondered, when had the lines of our story begun to shift? When he returned with 2 mugs, he sat close, closer than usual. Our knees brushed. I held my tea, grateful for its warmth, though it did little to settle the feeling growing inside. "I've missed this," he said softly. "Just being here with you." I set my mug down carefully. "I missed it too." Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed with unspoken words, unsorted thoughts. I finally turned to look at him, only to find his eyes already on me, quiet, searching, and full of something I wasn't sure I was ready to name. "I know a lot has changed," he said, voice barely above a murmur. "But maybe that doesn't have to mean losing what we have." I wanted to ask, "Lose what?" But the words caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. Instead, I nodded, my heart pounding hard enough that I was sure he could hear it. "You're right. We shouldn't." As the evening wore on and dusk melted into night, the room softened with golden light, shadows stretching like old memories. I realized then, Carter wasn't just a link to the past. He had become a part of my present, and maybe, just maybe, something more. He had made himself at home on the couch, long legs stretched out, one arm draped casually along the cushions. The soft glow from the lamp carved warm edges around his silhouette, making the moment feel intimate, like time had slowed just for us. My fingers played absently along the rim of my empty teacup as my eyes flicked toward the clock. 2:45 a.m. How had the hours slipped away? "If you want," I said carefully, "you can stay the night. It's late. I'd rather you didn't drive this tired." He grinned, eyes twinkling with that familiar spark. "Is this your way of saying you want me to stay, Aunt Melissa?" I gave an exaggerated sigh, rolling my eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just hoping for help with breakfast." He laughed, the sound low and easy, and leaned slightly, his knee brushing against mine. The contact was brief, but it felt electric. "I make no promises about breakfast," he teased. "But I do make excellent company after midnight." "Clearly," I said, setting my cup aside and curling my legs beneath me. "I never stay up this late. You're a terrible influence." "Well, you said you missed me. I'm just making up for lost time." I smiled at him, and something about the way he looked at me made the room feel smaller, like we were in our own little world, suspended in a moment neither of us knew how to name. He wasn't just family. He had become someone I could talk to, someone whose presence didn't just fill the silence, it made it feel full. "So," he said, stretching again with a content sigh, "you know all about my romantic disasters. But what about you? Why is my beautiful, brilliant aunt still single?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Beautiful and brilliant now? You're laying it on thick." "Only because it's true," he replied with a wink. "But really, what's the story?" I hesitated, brushing a hand through my hair as old memories stirred. "I think I just ran out of energy," I admitted. "I gave too much for too long. After the divorce, I tried again. Dated a bit, but it always felt hollow. Like I was chasing a version of love that didn't really exist." He nodded slowly. "I get that. Not the divorce part, obviously, but that feeling of running on empty. Like you're always the one giving, and no one sees how tired you are." "Exactly." He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, his expression earnest. "I think a lot of people settle because they're afraid to be alone. But I've never seen that fear in you." I looked at him, surprised by how deeply he understood me. I wasn't always this okay with solitude. In my 20s, it scared me. But now, I'm not sure if it's courage or just a kind of peace. "It's strength," he said firmly. "You've built something solid. That's rare." I didn't answer. I just let his words settle in the space between us, a comfort I hadn't known I needed. "And what about you?" I asked after pause. "Why haven't you found someone?" He chuckled, though the edge of his voice sounded tired. "Where do I begin? I keep meeting women who want the idea of me, who want the version that's all put together and easy to love. But I'm still figuring myself out, and that freaks people out. They want potential, not reality." My chest ached. "That sounds isolating." "It is," he admitted. "But it's also helped me realize what I don't want. I want something real. I want someone who sees me the way you do." I froze. "The way I do?" His expression shifted, no longer teasing, but sincere. "Yeah. You've never tried to change me. You've seen all the messy parts and never turned away. You make me feel like I'm enough." The air turned thick, like the words between us were too big to fit the room. My fingers twitched, unsure what to do. But then he reached for my hand, slowly, and his thumb brushed softly across my knuckles. "I don't want this to be weird," he said, his voice quiet. "I didn't mean to complicate things." "You haven't," I whispered, my voice barely louder than the tick of the wall clock. "Carter, you're one of the only people who reminds me that I'm still me. Not just someone who's been through hard times." His eyes held mine, and for a moment, everything else, the night, the past, the silence outside, faded into the background. It was just us. Two people who had shared laughter, grief, and now something far more complicated. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "You're so much more than what's happened to you." I smiled through the burn behind my eyes. "You really are trouble, you know? Keeping me up till sunrise and making me emotional." He chuckled, easing back against the cushions but keeping my hand in his. I could crash on the couch, or... I raised an eyebrow. The room suddenly warmer than it had been a moment ago. Or we could keep talking. "I'm not ready for this night to end." I squeezed his hand. "Me either." And so we did. We talked about everything. The dreams that still felt out of reach, the people we used to be, and who we were slowly becoming. By the time dawn painted the horizon in soft golds, I knew something had shifted. Something I couldn't put back the way it was before. Carter had always mattered to me. But now, something deeper had bloomed in the quiet hours. He drifted off on the couch, his head resting lightly on the armrest. I sat beside him, gently brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. The line we'd always lived by had softened, and while I didn't know where this path led, I didn't feel the familiar fear that usually came with change. I felt calm. The first light of morning filtered in through the curtains, casting a gentle warmth across the room. I stretched, my body still worn from the night's emotions, or maybe just from how deeply Carter had stirred something in me. I hadn't slept much, but that didn't matter. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt seen. The smell of fresh coffee lured me from bed. I padded barefoot across the wooden floor, my steps light, and found Carter at the stove, flipping pancakes with surprising ease. His hair stuck up in places from sleep, his t-shirt rumpled and loose. But he looked happy. "Morning, Annie," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a boyish grin. His voice carried the same warmth as last night, only now it felt tinted with something more intimate. "Hope you're hungry." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Didn't you claim last night that breakfast wasn't part of the deal?" He shrugged, flipping another pancake with flair. "Well, I changed my mind. Figured you earned it, letting me talk your ear off until 3 a.m. I walked over and picked up the mug he had set out for me. "You're spoiling me, Carter." "Maybe," he said, voice softer now. "But I like doing it." My heart skipped. I focused on adding cream to my coffee, hoping the steam would hide the warmth blooming in my cheeks. His words weren't just polite. They carried a weight, a quiet sincerity I couldn't ignore. I sat at the kitchen table as he brought over 2 plates, each topped with a perfect stack of pancakes, a bowl of fruit, and syrup on the side. "Chef Carter at your service," he announced, sitting across from me. I smiled and took a bite. "You're full of surprises." "I'm just trying to impress you," he teased with a wink. "Is it working?" I tilted my head. "You've always impressed me, Carter. You don't have to try." His eyes held mine for a moment, his smile softening into something more thoughtful. We ate in a quiet rhythm, the room filled only with the sound of utensils and the occasional hum of approval from me as I enjoyed the food. But Carter, true to form, couldn't let it stay serious for too long. "So," he said, a sly grin spreading across his face, "you thinking of wearing that cute little sundress today?" I nearly choked on my coffee. "What?" "You know the one," he said, feigning innocence. "The yellow one with the flowers? Looks great on you." I laughed, tossing my napkin at him. "Since when are you paying attention to what I wear?" He shrugged, clearly enjoying himself. "I notice things." We bantered back and forth until my stomach hurt from laughing. The lightness in the room felt rare, like something I didn't realize I'd been missing until he brought it back. Being around him was like catching your breath after being underwater too long. But then his phone buzzed on the table, cutting through the moment like a bell tolling in church. He glanced at it, brow furrowing slightly before picking it up. "Hey man," he said casually, leaning back. I couldn't hear the other side, just a faint mumble. His expression shifted, a flash of something unreadable crossing his face before he looked at me again, and then he smiled. "Oh, that's perfect," Carter said into the phone, his voice animated. "Yeah, we'll be there. Appreciate the invite." He placed the phone on the table, that familiar glint of mischief flashing in his eyes as he turned to me. "What?" I asked, narrowing my eyes at him. "What are you scheming?" He leaned in, his elbows resting on the table, smile wide. "My buddy's throwing a small party tonight. Nothing big, just good people and good music. He told me to bring someone fun." His smile deepened. "So, I said I'd bring you." I stared at him, speechless. "Me?" "Carter, come on. I haven't been to a party in years." "Which is exactly why you should come," he said smoothly. "You've spent way too much time inside hospital walls. It's time to live a little." My heart fluttered between excitement and apprehension. What kind of party are we talking about? Because I'm definitely not doing shots or dancing on anyone's table.
He laughed.
"No tables involved, I promise. Just a chill get-together. Music, snacks, a few drinks. You'll be fine." I twisted a strand of hair around my finger, hesitant. "I won't know anyone. What would I even say?" His voice softened as he leaned closer. "You won't have to say much. I'll be there with you the whole time. Actually, I already figured out how I'm going to introduce you." "Oh," I asked suspiciously. "And how's that?" He reclined with an unbothered grin. "As my girlfriend." I nearly spilled my coffee. "I'm sorry, you're what?" "My girlfriend," he repeated casually. "Relax, Melissa. It's just for laughs. No one knows you as my aunt. They'll just see you as someone I'm lucky to bring." My pulse quickened. Whether it was nerves or a rush of something else, I wasn't sure. "That's such a bad idea." "It's not," he said, voice gentle. "It's just one night. And who knows, you might even have fun. You deserve that." I looked at him, really looked at him, how sure he was, how easily he made it all seem, and I felt something in me tip. "All right," I said, exhaling. "But if this gets weird, I'm blaming you." He laughed, triumphant.
"Deal."
Sunlight poured through the windows as I sipped what was left of my coffee, the idea of going out circling in my mind. There was a strange mix of nervousness and anticipation in my chest. It had been a long time since I felt this kind of flutter, uncertain but very much alive. Later that afternoon, I stood frozen in front of my closet, an explosion of fabric and footwear around me. Everything I owned suddenly felt wrong. Too safe, too modest, too me before. I held up one dress, then another, unable to picture myself wearing any of them. I sat at the edge of the bed, overwhelmed. What was I even doing? I wasn't 25. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. That's when there was a soft knock. "Hey, you good?" Carter's voice filtered through the door like a warm breeze. A second later, he peeked in, taking in the chaos. He gave me a knowing smile and stepped inside. "I'm a total disaster," I muttered through my hands. He sat next to me on the bed, his weight making the mattress dip. "You're overthinking it," he said calmly. "This isn't a fashion show. It's just a party." I looked at him, eyes searching. He pulled me into a hug, his arms wrapping around me in a way that felt grounding. "You could show up in sweatpants," he whispered, "and you'd still be the most beautiful woman there." I felt a flush spread through my cheeks. His sincerity wasn't something I could shrug off. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Anytime." He smiled, then gestured toward the chair. "What about that one?" I followed his gaze to a pale cream dress draped over the back. Fitted, a little shorter than what I usually wore, and definitely bolder than my comfort zone. I bit my lip. "Isn't that a bit much?" Carter shook his head.
"No."
"It's perfect." There was something in his tone that made me trust him. I took the dress and stepped into the bathroom, heart pounding as I slipped it on. When I stepped out and saw the look in his eyes, still and admiring, I stopped breathing for a second. Carter's eyes widened, and for a second, he just stood there, scanning me from head to toe. His gaze lingered, and when it finally returned to my face, something flickered in his expression that made my pulse stutter. Wow. He breathed, barely louder than the hush in the room. I'd really like you to be my girlfriend. I laughed softly, the sound shaky and uncertain. You're only saying that because you feel like you have to. He stepped closer, voice low but unwavering.
No.
I'm saying it because I mean it. He crept up my neck, and I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, he gave me that roguish grin and backed away. Now it's my turn. Try not to miss me while I go get ready. I watched him leave the room, my heart still racing from the intensity in his eyes. I finished my makeup with unsteady hands, hearing faint sounds from the other room. Drawers opening, closet doors creaking, the soft spritz of cologne. When he returned, I turned and immediately forgot to breathe. He looked effortlessly sharp. A fitted black button-up left the top view undone, revealing just a teasing hint of his chest, while his pants hugged him in a way that made it difficult not to stare. And that scent, clean, musky, unmistakably him, wrapped around me like warmth on a winter night. You look great, I said, my voice lighter than I intended. His smirk was slow, deliberate. He crossed the room in 2 easy steps.
So do you.
He extended his hand, and when I took it, his fingers closed gently around mine. His touch was steadying, calming, but it also sent a jolt through me that made my breath catch. Shall we, beautiful? I nodded, letting him lead me outside. He opened the car door for me, and as I settled into the passenger seat, I caught a glimpse of him in the amber glow of the sunset, his jaw sharp, expression focused, eyes catching the light like fire. When he noticed me looking, he reached across the center console and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. You good? I swallowed, voice barely audible.
Yeah.
I'm good. The party was already in full swing when we arrived, music floating through the air, laughter echoing around the backyard. My nerves kicked up again, but Carter kept his fingers laced with mine, his touch a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. It's just people, music, and snacks, he whispered. You'll be fine. Inside, the space buzzed with energy, conversations blending with music, drinks clinking, people moving between the kitchen and patio. It was casual, intimate, not overwhelming. Soon, we were roped into a round of beer pong. Carter played with playful intensity, celebrating each point with an over-the-top cheer that had me in stitches. I was terrible, missing most of my shots, but by the time we hit the 3rd round, I didn't care. The drinks were hitting me faster than I realized. After another failed toss, I stumbled, reaching out instinctively, and found Carter's arms steadying me. Whoa there, he said with a soft laugh. All right, wild child. Time for some air. He guided me through the back door and into the cool night. The contrast was sharp against my flushed cheeks. We walked to the edge of the patio, the sound of the party fading behind us. I leaned into him without thinking, resting my head on his shoulder. His warmth felt like the only stable thing in that moment. Better? I nodded slowly, eyes closed. Thanks for watching out for me. His voice was softer now, closer to a whisper. I always will. Something in the way he said it made me lift my head. Our eyes locked, and the quiet around us deepened. His gaze dropped to my lips, and my heart beat so loud I thought it might echo. He reached out, his hand brushing my cheek as he leaned in, slowly, carefully, as though asking for permission with every inch. His lips met mine in the gentlest kiss, featherlight at first, almost questioning. But when I didn't pull away, he leaned in more, his other arms sliding around my waist to draw me against him. It was warm, real, and entirely unexpected. His kiss wasn't rushed or clumsy. It was careful, as if he'd thought about it 100 times before. The heat of his body, the scent of his cologne, the quiet between our breaths, it was almost too much. But I didn't want to stop. When we parted, barely an inch separated us. His forehead touched mine, both of us breathing faster than we should have been. I've wanted to do that for a long time, he said, voice rough at the edges. I smiled, my fingers still curled against his chest. So have I. We stood there wrapped in stillness, the cool air brushing past us, but we barely noticed. In that moment, the confusion, the questions, the rules, they all faded. What remained was connection. Something we'd been circling for far longer than either of us had dared to admit.